Right, what's up guys? Thank you for tuning in to the Uncommon Mindset podcast. Today I'm joined by the one and only Ashley Bendle. I'll just give you a brief background on who Ash is. Ash is a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt under Ash Williams and Chris Rees at the age of only 23. She's been doing Jiu Jitsu for over 18 years and is one of the best female Jiu Jitsu fighters in the world. Ash is not only a phenomenal coach at Chris Rees Academy, but she's exceptional at what she does. 2021 is going to be a magical year for her, and she will show the world what she is made of. I'm super excited to be joined by you today, Ash.
Thank you.
So I just want to start off by asking, why and when did you start Brazilian Jiu Jitsu?
So I started when I was 4 or 5, like I was really young. The sport was never actually meant for me. My parents put me in the sport because of my brother, not actually me. Okay. My brother's a little bit older than me, so they were like, oh, it's time he got into something. I was actually too young to be on the mats, but I was sitting on the side and Chris was like, she's not that far. I think it was coming up to my 5th birthday, and he was like, look, just let her have a go. Let's see how it goes. And literally I was the one that took to it. I was the one that went on the mat and was able to just be like, oh, this is fun. I can do this. And I picked up on everything quite quickly. So literally what meant for me, it was never my sport. Like my parents never had any intention of leaving me in the sport or putting me into it at that age. But I went with it and it worked.
Yeah, no, sweet. And I want to touch on this with you because, one of the greatest things about Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is that it does shatter the concept of what a woman should or shouldn't do. And, gender doesn't make a difference in your ability to, adapt and learn and use Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Yeah. However, it would be ignorant to not touch on the fact that it is a male-dominant sport. So, I just want to ask you, what was it like growing up doing a sport that is, predominantly male-dominated?
It was interesting, to say the least. Like, obviously, growing up, when I was little, there was a few other girls in the class, but as I got older, there was less and less. Mm-hmm. And obviously, I was growing up around boys. Every single day I'd come training and there'd be 10 boys on the mat and me. And that would be it. And I think growing up, it didn't make a difference until I was about 13. I didn't see any of the boys different to me. They were just my training partners. I didn't care. Plus, a lot of them, I was friendly with anyway, because where we started was around by where I lived. So I knew a lot of the guys or the boys that started training. So for me, at that age, I was just like, oh, this is fine. But at the same time, I never had a female role model to look at. Mm-hmm. In the gym, there wasn't many females. There definitely wasn't any that competed. Mm-hmm. So for me, I had to pave my own way in the sport. So I'd look around and just be like, oh, well, who do I get to train with today? My brother, that other boy, that was all I was. So for me, when I was really young, up until I was about 13, perfectly fine. When you start to hit 13, the boys, through science and stuff, they get stronger. That didn't happen to me. I was still literally at 5'4", and I haven't grown since then. I was small then, small now. So for me, I was just there being demolished by teenage boys who couldn't care less. Obviously, at that point, they get that ego part in their head. So they were just oh, cool, we can try and beat up the tiny human being on the mat because I can't beat up the person that's the same size as me. Yeah. So at that point, I think it started to make a difference. But again, still I had no one to look at and be like, I can do that. They've done it. So I think growing up, I had stages where I was like, how do you do this as a female athlete? I just had to kind of talk my way through it. I was lucky, I had Chris, who obviously taught me since I was 5, who has literally supported me with anytime I've gone, I want to do this. He's like, cool, let's go for it. And my parents were always standing there being like, we'll take you to competition. We'll do this, we'll do that. They didn't care. But the people in the sport a lot of the time, being the only female on the mat, sometimes it just was. You'd walk into a room. I remember being 13, 14 years old, or maybe slightly older. My dad wasn't training that night, so I'd be dropped off. I'd look around the room and I'd just be like, well, everyone's 70 kilos or 90 kilos. I was like, who do I train with? And I remember just trying to be well, some days you can't be the smallest person in the room and be able to be fighting a 90 kilo man. Yeah. You've got to take into account, and that took me a long time to learn as well. Being the only female was tough.
Yeah, of course.
But at the end of the day, it made me better in the long run. I used to compete against boys as well. So when I was little, we'd do mixed gender categories. And I think training with boys in the gym and competing against them, it helped in the long run. Like, I don't think I'd be where I am now if that hadn't happened.
Yeah, of course. Did you ever get like a sense of like coming to training and a guy's like, oh, I don't want to train with her because she's a girl?
100%.
You get that a lot? Yeah.
100%. I used to have people look at me, turn away, and then just walk off. And I'm like,
no way.
Well, okay, I'm the only girl in the room and you've just made eye contact with me and walked the other way. But at the end of the day, some men do it because they're like, I don't know how to roll or train. Especially when I was younger, like with a small young female. And like people, a lot of them wouldn't have known how long I've trained. So they wouldn't know my experience. They wouldn't know I've done jiu-jitsu since I was 5 years old and I'm not just going to flop on the floor and have no clue what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think some men were just a bit like, I don't know if I want to go with her. But I was lucky, like I said, my dad trained anyway, so I trained a lot with him. There was a few others like I could train with. Like I started training with Ash when he started as well. So I'd be on the mats with people I wouldn't mind training with, but I did have other people. Like it'd come to grappling, people would be like, no, I don't want to roll with you.
Yeah.
And just walk off. And it was kind of disheartening, but at the same time, I used to speak to Chris about it and he'd be like, look, just get through it for now. Like eventually you'll have the people you need to train, but even now sometimes I think people look at me and they're like, yeah, no, duck your head, walk away. But
little do they know that you can just tap them all out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did anyone like laugh at you when you told them that, you know, you do jiu-jitsu or anything like that?
Definitely. Like going through school, the amount of times people were like, oh, I'm scared of you. Just literally straight out just scared of me, but they had no idea what I do.
Yeah.
They just knew I could fight. That was it. And like people I was friends with in school used to be like, oh, you train too much. But I always had in my head what I wanted to do in the long run. Like I knew this is what I wanted to do. Even teachers in school would be like, I'd be like, I want to teach jiu-jitsu full time. I was like, this is what I want as my job. And they'd be like, really? Maybe you should have a bit more of a realistic goal. And I was like, well, I suppose I have to now. Because like when you're 14 years old and somebody that's supposed to guide you is telling you, a bit more of a realistic goal, you're like, well, I have to, don't I? But I think I was really lucky. I got through education, but like my parents and Chris and like Ash were all there going, well, once you get out the other side, well, it's free for you. You can do whatever you want. Like, I remember always saying, like, I want to teach jiu-jitsu, I want to compete. I had so many people just be like, yeah, are you sure that's what you want to do with your life? But I'm here now, and half of them didn't actually get to achieve what they wanted to. So I'm kind of like, we made it, so it worked.
No, of course, yeah. No, like I always say this to you, like you do what you love, and I'm kind of jealous, you know. But yeah, like you mentioned as well, like Chris is such a supportive person, and Ash is as well, and like the women here at Chris Rees Academy are encouraged to do more. But I want to ask you, like, did you ever feel like a sense of like isolation? Like, did you ever question yourself, like why am I doing this? Like, none of my friends are doing this. Why am I here?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, my friends in school, the people I was friends with in school, would be like, you train too much. Or can you come out this weekend? I'd be like, I can't, I'm competing. Or can you do this? I was like, I can't because I've got to catch up with something to be able to do something in jiu-jitsu. And definitely at times, I remember when I was like 8 and I was like, why am I doing this? I just want to quit. I just want to go home and do something else. But my parents were always like, look, you're going to go, you enjoy it when you're there. So they were like, just get you there, you'll be fine, you can do jiu-jitsu. And like once I was there, I was like, I love life. But it was getting there. And as I got older, definitely people were always like, what are you doing? And that made me question myself. And I think at some points I've gone through like rough patches in competing, or I've gone through rough patches mentally. And those have definitely been times where I've been like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. And especially going through like college and uni, having the stress of exams, the stress of deadlines, everything like that. Definitely at some point I was like, do I really think I can get to the other side of this and keep training, keep competing, keep coaching full time the way I want to and still be able to do everything? And I remember just being like, is this really what I want to do? But every time like something would happen, I'd be like, yeah, this definitely is. But it took me a long time to even realise that I could do it, if that makes sense. Like until I was like 17, I never really had that in my head of, yeah, I could definitely do this. Before that, I was kind of like, oh, well, it's a bit of a dream, but I've got my back up there if I need it. And like I kind of done my A-levels and started doing my degree with the thought of, well, it's there if I need it. But now, like, coming out the other side, I managed to do a degree that could help with the sport. And I've come out the other side being like, oh, wait, this is possible. I still get the days from, like, am I really doing something smart? But we definitely have, like, a supportive team here that are able to, like, band together. If we're having a tough week, we're just like, look, have, like, a few days out, or drop down in your coaching, drop down in your training. So it makes it less in your head of, can I do it? It's just, okay, this is just a tough week, not quitting week.
Yeah, no, of course. It's so interesting you say that, because that's what separates people, I think. It's the sacrifice that you put. Like, a lot of people, they'd rather go and, you know, I'll hang out with my friends tonight, but you're there, like, training, you know, not messing about, which is incredible. And I do want to talk to you about this as well. I know that, you know, you, like I mentioned, that you're at a stage where you do what you love, which is incredible. But, you know, I do want to touch on this topic because you did bring it up about, like, your like mental health. You know, so I want to talk about, like, anxiety and being overwhelmed in certain situations, as most of us are aware that, you know, anxiety is the most prevalent mental health disorder, and it's definitely important to talk about and not shy away from. So I read this article, right, where it stated anxiety can trigger your flight or fight stress responses and release a flood of chemicals and hormones like adrenaline into your system. In the short term, this increases your pulse and breathing rate, so your brain can get more oxygen. This prepares you to respond appropriately to an intense situation. So I want to ask you, is there ever, like, an intense situation that you had to go through, and, like, how did you deal with that? So it could be something like, you know, competing, or even a training session, or even anything like, you know, other parts of your life. Like, how do you tend to deal with that anxiety?
So I had, like, a really, really bad time with mental health and, like, anxiety and panic attacks towards the end of my A-levels and through my degree. I think it was a mixture of all the stress from, well, doing a degree and A-levels, having all of that. Like, you're always taught from such a young age, you have to get your education, you have to do well. And I think the external pressures, like, got me through that. But a lot of it came out in training, in competing. I remember there were days, genuinely for about 3 months, where I'd walk in the room, turn around and walk back out, because I just burst into tears, because I just had that, like, the fight or flight response would kick in here. I remember having a conversation with Chris and being like, why do you think it's happening? And we were always like, could it be adrenaline? Like, the first thing we looked at, there's a way of getting, like, anxiety and stuff through post-adrenaline done. And that's where it kind of started. So it was kind of like, I think, a mix of uni and college and doing all of that, and then competing and having the adrenaline done after would send me into, like, anxiety. And that kind of, like, just built up. And I remember that was a point where I was like, I just can't do this anymore. Can I walk in the room and keep training, keep competing? Can I keep up with everyone in the room? Because I'd be having a panic attack and I'd just turn around and walk out. And I remember, like, a few times it happened in competition. It happened in the middle of a match once, because I got, I think, so worked up about just get it done. Let's just keep fighting. And then something, I think, went slightly wrong and my adrenaline just went snapped. And then it sent the fight or flight response. And up until that point, I wasn't losing, but we were kind of, like, on par. So I think that just sent me off on one. And all I had to do then for the rest of that match was go, just don't have a panic attack. Just stay calm, keep fighting, keep trying your best, keep doing what you can do. And I think that was, like, one of the biggest moments where I was, like, controlling everything, keeping everything in. But definitely, like, throughout the whole of like 4 years, I remember just every day being stressed, every day having panic attacks. Like, it worked. I actually ended up working with a mind coach to try and combat that and work with that and kind of, like, capitalize off the anxieties rather than letting them flood me, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So, like, instead of being like, oh yeah, they can take over, being like, okay, what can I do to take this and, like, create a different kind of energy? Well, how can I do it? What can I do to do it? And we worked a lot on, like, different things, like imagery and just working on positive self-talk and stuff like that. And I think that was, like, a major thing to be able to control in all of that. But definitely for, like, 4 years, there were days, like, I think as well you see it in a lot of young girls, is that time where everything, like, changes. Your training partners are getting stronger, you're get like not quite as strong as them because you develop slightly slower. And I think at that point, like, as well, when you're a bit older and like all the boys are way stronger than you, way bigger than you, I think you put a different kind of internal stress in you. People don't realise that the stress, especially from competing and like anxiety and stuff, isn't from anyone around you. It's from yourself. Nobody, I could walk up to Chris and be like, do you care if I lose this next competition? And he'd probably be like, well, I wouldn't be like, yeah, let's lose it. Yeah. But he'd be like, we'll come out the other side and we'll just train again. Like, I'm not going to get angry at you. Yeah. But I think in your head you were like, I can't disappoint anyone. But it's all you. Yeah. Nobody's going to be disappointed in you. But that took a long time for me to learn. And like a long time to kind of like settle in and accept that it was my brain kind of destroying myself, not people around me.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Yeah, no, it's anxiety and like stress and stuff is self-imposed. Like, you put it on yourself, like you mentioned. A lot of people say that when you feel anxious, when you feel stressed, you know, go out there, go and do a sport. But you're saying that sometimes when you're doing the sport, you're actually getting more stressed and more anxious, which is kind of different. Yeah, it's important to know that for people like listening at home as well. It's not just, you know, about, oh, let me just distract myself and go and do something. Like, you need to figure out yourself. Yeah, for sure. So I want to touch on this with you as well. So the topic of fear. So what's your thoughts on fear?
Like, obviously with fear, there's the psychological thing of you've got to have, like, you can have a fear of failure or a need to succeed and stuff like that. And like, I think with fear, you can't be scared. Like, you can be scared. You can walk into a competition and be like, right, okay, I'm nervous. This has got to happen. But at the end of the day, it's going to happen either way. Like, I tell myself every time I compete, I'm like, walk on, and I'm like, you're here. You've got to do it. So you can be as scared as you want, but all you've got to do is go out there and perform. Yeah. Whether you perform and succeed or perform and you don't get the result you want, as long as that performance level is what you are happy with, that's all you can do. I think people sometimes let fear, and that's where the anxiety comes from, overtake them. And sometimes that can fully just drain you. That can drain you more than anything else. And I think when you are fearful, sometimes the best thing to do is walk out there and do it. Depends what situation you are in your life. Like, for me, jiu-jitsu's my career as well. I can't be like, I don't want to do it. Like, if I didn't do it, then I don't really have a career, if that makes sense. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, of course, if I was like competing week on week and I was kind of like, oh, I don't know if this is what I want to do, I'm quite scared of doing it, then I could be like, I'm going to take a drop back, not do this weekend. But at the end of the day, I can't be fearful of everything. Nobody can. If you're fearful of everything, you're never going to get anything done. Yeah. So it's kind of like, just step forward and do it. Just get on with something. But at the same time, be mindful of not letting that fear control you.
Yeah, of course. Fear and like tough times are what make you into the person you are today. Yeah. So like before, I used to shy away from times like that, but now like I've just changed my mindset completely, and I actually enjoy when there's a tough time. Like, I look at it like it's an opportunity to grow. So yeah, like, no, it's definitely important. Yeah. So what would you say your goals are? So like, what is next for you now?
Obviously, COVID's put a stop to a lot of things. In terms of like with competition and stuff, there was like, I want to do a lot of the major IBJJF tournaments. At the moment, I'm supposed to qualify for them at black belt. Haven't had time to qualify for them. So we're hoping that next year now, if things come back, whether they're behind closed doors, whether they move city, that IBJJF take away the qualifying points. If they don't, then we're going to have to wait another year for me to do much. But if they do, then hopefully I can get like some of the worlds in next year and like just make that like debut on the big stage. Like, I can't wait to be able to do that. For the last 6 months, we've been training and doing things without being able to show anyone what we've done. But definitely we've upped our training, upped everything, and we're all becoming better as a team. And I kind of can't wait to go out and perform and show people what we've been doing. Kind of look at ADCC trials as well. Like, me and Ash Williams have spoken about it before, trying to hit that ADCC trials. We were going to obviously hit them the end of this year, but they've moved them. And women can't qualify for the first one anyway. They have to do the second trials as well, like to qualify. So maybe look at doing that. Like it'd be a good challenge. Whether I qualify or not, I'm thinking I'm young enough that it's experience. If I don't qualify for the first one, my first attempt, then in 2 years' time, I could try again. And that would be a point where I could be like, right, okay, let's go for it. At the end of the day, we're training here every day for ADCC style, sub-only grappling. I'd love as well to be able to do some sub-only shows, some more. We were supposed to have some this year, but again, COVID put everything down. But I know, like, I'd love to be able to do Polaris, which is something that kind of, like, could happen, hopefully, soon. Yeah. Like, they're pretty good at trying to, like, match people that, like, especially if you're sponsored by Tatami or something, they try to match you a bit easier if you are part of their brand. So hopefully that will happen in the next few months, years. So, but obviously nobody knows. That's it, yeah. Like, unless comps come back, I might just be rolling around on the floor, maybe practicing some more combat jiu-jitsu with the boys. Yeah.
No, it's so fascinating just listening to you, honestly, because a lot of people, like, they need to understand it's just turn up. Like, that's the first hardest part to do. And, like, you've touched on that just now. Like, you just need to turn up, and if you, like you mentioned, if you don't even make it, it's experience anyway. Yeah. Like, you're not going to lose anything from just turning up. No. And, like, it's just amazing just listening to you. And, you know, the beautiful thing about Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is that it is designed for smaller and weaker opponents to dominate larger ones using technique over strength. And, you know, you can always learn that technique, and you can always beat someone. So, like, anyone listening at home, you know, like, don't be afraid to actually attend a jiu-jitsu session because you're maybe small, or maybe you're a girl, or even a boy, or maybe you're big, or even whatever, you know, just turn up. And honestly, you can always learn that technique if you need to. There's this guy, Les Brown, he's like a motivational talker. He says, don't let someone else's opinions become your reality. So, you know, it doesn't matter if you're a girl and, you know, you're small, just honestly turn up and you will get those techniques. Like, this is example of, you know, who can literally tap out anyone, big, small, you know, and girl, boy, whatever it is. But just the last question now for you. What would you say to those little girls that are listening, or like even women who, you know, who might be afraid to actually turn up to, not in jiu-jitsu and anything in life? Like, what advice would you give them to actually do it?
If you let the fear of it control you, then it's not going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. But at the end of the day, if you turn up to a place and say you do come to jiu-jitsu and you're feeling like, oh no, trust me, nobody in the room cares that you're there. They're just going to be like, oh cool, new person, that's fine. And especially I think if you're a young girl or woman, like, society teaches you certain things, certain ways you should be, certain ways you should act. And at the end of the day, if you keep going along with the societal norms, you're not going to ever get anywhere. You're not going to break through them. And like, I always look at like the young girls in jiu-jitsu. I see some of them come in looking so nervous, so scared. And I'm just like, look, I've been exactly where you are. I've been that teenage girl. I've been that like 5-year-old girl who comes on the mat and is just looking around the room like everyone's big. Everyone's quite scary. And like walking into a room full of men, I know how intimidating that can be. Like, it's not so much for me now, because obviously if I walk into a room, I'm just like, well, you should know me, I'm one of the coaches here. But I think that's a big thing as well. It's like, walking into the room is the first step. But just being able to keep everything internal, like being like, okay, this seems scary, but at the end of the day, am I going to get a better outcome from it? Like, I think the biggest thing for little girls, especially in young girls, is just going, well, if it's what I want to do, why can't I do it? Like, I grew up certain people being like, realistic goal, come on, like, let's have a realistic one. And I was like, I don't want the realistic one. So like, for young girls to even if they come and they don't ever want to compete, this is a step that's putting them out to their comfort zone. And like, that can create something different for them. Like, people I don't think realise how much magic and power sport has as a whole. Like, when you look into the psychology behind sport and like enjoying sport, it's this lifelong participation you're looking for. Especially with young girls, it could be if you find that one sport or one thing they like doing that can create such a magic, like such a powerful statement for them. If you hate one thing and you manage to associate, like if you hate like a certain sport, you associate that with all the sports, you're going to hate all sports. I think like for a young girl, if they come across and they're like, I hate this sport, try them in a new one. Try something new, put them out of their comfort zone. For women, like if you've hated something in the past, try something different. That's the best advice. Just keep trying things. Like, I know jiu-jitsu is scary. It's a male-dominated sport. Half the men are really, really big and quite scary. And you walk into a room and I was teaching the other day and I swear half the class was 6 foot tall. And I'm 5'4", so I was walking around just like, I'm going to get squished. But I was like, I get to do this. This is how I get to. I was like, slightly small. They were doing takedowns as well, so I was slightly scared they were going to land on me. But I was like, this is what I get to do. Like, it's put me out of the comfort zone. But I also think, like, for young girls watching me, being able to lead a group of 30 or, like, whatever men, fully grown men, that were 6 foot tall, and they looked at me, they'd be like, well, that's cool. I could do that. Yeah, and, like, I think that's a big thing and a big reason, like, why I always try and motivate myself that a little bit more is to be like, I want to be that role model for that little girl that I never had. Or role model for that woman. Because, like, I know some of the women are always like, that's pretty cool what you do. And I'm like, well, all you have to do is get on the mat and try it. That's all you have to do. Whether you enjoy it or not. If you try it, you can be like, look, I didn't like that. But taking that first step is always the biggest and scariest thought.
Yeah, there's something about, like, talking to you, talking to Aidan, talking to Ash Williams, like, you all have, like, the similar mindset of, you know, stepping outside your comfort zone, you know, attending that class, don't be afraid, like, and, you know, on the other side of fear, there is success. Like, even if you fail, you know, you will succeed. You know, I do want to say that, you know, you are truly an uncommon person. Like, the way you train, the way you push yourself, the way you attend classes and just tap out anyone and everyone is just incredible. So I do want to say thank you for being here today, and I hope that, you know, the girls, the women, even the guys, you know anyone listening to this podcast that have gained value from Ash today, and I really think that, you know, she's gonna blow up soon, like 2021. Hopefully, when the world opens up,
What if the world open up?
She's gonna blow up, right? Yeah. Thank you so much, Ash.
No problem.
I appreciate that.